Hey, what's going on, ladies and gentlemen? This is going to be a short-ish video on making a clone collecting app. So, step one, we are going to delete this cat. Done. Next, we're going to choose a backdrop. So I have backdrops chosen. I'm up here, backdrops. Click. Grab a backdrop. I'll go with basketball court. Now, the backdrop doesn't make a difference. Choose whatever you want. Notice I have two backdrops here. The white one, that's the plain one, and the one I added. I'm just going to delete that one right there. Next, I need to have two sprites. And I'm going to choose from my sprite library. And I am fond of the bowl. Let's go with, actually, you know what? Scratch that. Let's go with button 2. So my button 2 pops up. It's right here in the middle, and that's a little bit big. So I'm going to shrink it down. And that's better. Move it down to the bottom, which is where it's going to ultimately be. Now, the next step is I want my button to be able to move back and forth, because what's going to happen is I'm going to have things that are falling down from above, and I want to collect them with my button. So there's my button over here. I'm coding my button there, so I'm going to go to Events. I'm going to go to Zoom In. I'm going to go when flag is clicked, Control, if sensing, key, space, pressed, and that'll be right arrow. I want it to move right, so I'm going to go to, this is from sensing, control, motion, movement, down. I'm going to go change X by 10. Make sure this is change X. If it says change Y, it's not going to work. Now, I'm going to go to duplicate, and I'm going to click right here where that if is, makes another block of code, just doubles it obviously. Click, click, and this, because I want it to go left, is now negative 10. Keep in mind, X is our left and right axis. So that's almost done. It still isn't going to work. I need to go control and forever. So, done. Click my flag, and I'm just testing it out to see if it works. You can see it's moving. It's good to go. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is choose something to collect. So I'm going to go to my sprite library here. I'm going to scroll down. I ultimately need something to fall from the sky, and I am going to choose Cheesy Puffs. Those are delicious. So that's a little bit big again, so I'm going to go to shrink them down. That's probably a good size. Now, so what we're going to do with this Cheesy Puffs is I want them to fall from up above kind of randomly, but I don't want to have just like 100 Cheesy Puff sprites, because that would just be a little excessive. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this idea of a clone, and what that does is it will make a duplicate of itself until I tell it to stop. So step one, I need to tell my Cheesy Puffs to make a clone of itself. So I'm going to go to Events, when flag is clicked, I'm going to go to Control, make a clone of myself. And I want that to just repeat. Now, we could use repeat forever. The problem with repeat forever is that it might get stuck into a loop. And sometimes that loop is okay, and sometimes that loop will mess everything up. So we're going to utilize repeat until. So this will happen until this occurs. And what there's going to be is there's going to be a timer. And that timer is going to get to 0, and when it gets to 0, it's going to stop. So it would be repeat until timer equals 0. So that is that step. The next thing is if I click this flag, I'm just going to click it to see if it's working. You can't really tell anything, but that is because it is making all of the clones on top of that cheese puff. So stop, they'll disappear. This was the original. So what I want to do to slow that down a little bit, actually we'll let that go. The next thing I want to do is go to the top, and I'm going to do this to give you an idea of how fast this happens. So when I create a clone of my cheese puffs, what I want to happen is them to go to the top and then fall down. So the next thing that happens, I'm going to go over here when I start as a clone, move this over, move this up. When I start as a clone, I want to go motion, go to this X coordinate is going to be the one that goes left and right. So I'm going to go operators, pick a random number, and this is going to be negative 220 to 220. And I'm going to shrink that just a little bit so it's a little bit easier to read. And my Y, which is my up-down axis, I want to be at the top. And so here's my Y coordinate. 180 is the highest. So I'm going to go just with 180. You could make it 170. Either one's fine. So I click the flag, and poof, you can see all my cheese puffs are appearing at the top, which is exactly what I want to happen. Holy cow, that's a lot of cheese puffs. But it's working, and so far so good. The next thing I want to happen is I want them to fall down to the bottom. So I'm going to go with when I go to the top. Next thing I want them to do is go motion, and I want them to change Y. Make sure this is change Y, not change X by 10. And so if we want it to fall, this has to be -10. Grab control. I want that to repeat. Now, if this is Y 180 and this is Y -180, to get from the top to the bottom, that's 360 total graph points. So I click here. If this is 10, it's very simple math. It tells me that needs to be 36. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to click this flag, and it should rain cheese puffs. Lo and behold, there they are. So a couple problems with this. One, all those cheese puffs are just hanging out at the bottom. And two, this is falling ridiculously fast. Too many, and also I still have my original cheese puff right there. So I want that to also not be there. So let's do a couple things. We'll tackle a couple things at once. The first thing that we're going to fix is all these cheese puffs that just collect at the bottom. To fix that, I'm going to go delete this clone, and I'm just going to drop that on right there. So if I stop this, we'll just run it, and they should be disappearing. So far, good addition. Next, stop that. I want to slow it down. So I don't want this like mass rain of cheese puffs. So what I'm going to do is, I think this will work if I leave it running. I'm going to go wait 1 second, and over here where I have this clone, and anytime that we want to modify the speed, we're going to modify the time. So I'm going to drop that in right there, and that, there we go, starts to slow them down a little bit. Maybe that's a little too slow. I can change this to 0.5. But I would just point out that, so that block is working right now, but if I take that block out, it's crazy pouring cheese puffs. This block right here, drop it back in, and it will slow it down. That's probably a good speed, half a second. So far, fixed 2 problems with this delete this clone, wait a half second. Next, I need to delete the original. That's pretty straightforward. Looks, I want hide, so when the flag is clicked, I want the original to hide. It's not hiding yet because I haven't clicked the flag. So if I do that, stop, start, it's gone, but the problem is the cheese puff clones are gone. That's because it's still hidden. What I need to do is when I start it as a clone, I need to tell it to show up. So there they are, ta-da! So I have raining cheese puffs, I have my clones, everything is working just the way I want it to. Let's do this. There we go. It's a little easier to see. So those 2 blocks of code right now are good. I will note I'm still missing this one right here, but we will fix that in just a moment. So the next thing that we want to do is I want to make it so I can collect my cheese puffs with my blue button number 2. So at this point I'm going to make 2 data blocks. So I'm going to click on stop so the cheese puffs stop falling. I click on data. Now right here, make a variable. And the first one is going to be score, and the second one is going to be timer. Now I will point out that I left this clicked for all sprites. Sometimes you'll use this one, but 95% of the time you'll use for all sprites. So I'm going to click on OK. So I have 2 timers, score and 2 timers, 2 variables, score and timer, and then I have set timer to 0, and if I want to change that to set score to 0, I would click on that. So the next thing that I want to happen is I'm actually going to add a little bit to this block of code. And so what I want to happen is when I start the game, I want my score to be at 0, and I want to set the timer to 5. So timer to 5. So what that is going to do is when I'm running this app, I should be able to click the flag, and my timer's at 5, but nothing else is happening. Even if I touch a cheese puff, I don't get a score. So I need to code it to collect those cheese puffs. That code is going to look like this. So I'll move that over just to the side. I'll go events, control, excuse me, and when I start as a clone. So when those cheese puffs start as a clone, I want them to wait until they touch button 2, sensing, touching, button 2. Now note this. Mine says button 2 because that says button 2. If you chose a different sprite here, yours won't say button 2, it'll say something else. So when I start as a clone, wait until touching button 2, and then I want to go to data. I want to change, not timer, but score by 1. And then I want it to hide. And what that'll do is it'll make it look like it gets collected. So it falls. There we go, collected. And notice I'm getting score at the top, so if I make this just a little bit bigger, score is getting collected, my timer isn't counting down yet, so that's the next thing I need to do is make my timer work. So I stop that, move it over, and timer code. The timer code looks like this, and it's going to be pretty straightforward. It's going to go events, when flag is clicked, control, I want this to repeat until again, and then I'm going to go data, change timer by -1. Now, that's not totally done yet, but I want to run it just to see if it's working. So this should count down because it's negative when I get there. And, holy cow, do you see how fast that's going? That's like out of control. So to fix that problem, so let's see if I click the flag. Yeah, way too fast. So to fix that problem, what I want it to do, if that's going to be 5 seconds, let's say, I need to go to control. And again, if we're going to modify speed, we're going to change the time. So I'll repeat, wait 1 second, change timer. Wait 1 second, change timer. So now, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Perfect. So notice it's in negative numbers right now. I want it to stop at 0. I want everything to stop at 0. So that is where these two come in. Repeat until, repeat until. And I'm going to go operators, and I want this to be twice, so I'm going to take out 2 equals. So equals, equals, and then I'm going to go data, timer, timer, equals, 0, equals, 0, and I'm going to put it right there and right there. So now I have fully working code, everything is filled in, everything looks good. So this, when I run, this should start at 0, that should start at 5, and when my timer gets to 0, everything should stop. Click the flag, timer's going, collecting cheese puffs, and 0, and that was the last one. So everything is working just the way I want it to, and here is a shot of the code. I'll try to make this as easy to read as possible, and that is it. I'll just leave this up here. I'll zoom out maybe 1. Remember, here, let's do this. There we go. Now you can see it all. There's the code. I'll just leave that up, but otherwise you're good to go.